Deep in the heart of northern Mozambique lies the Nasia Reserve, a place so vast and untouched that it is often called Africa's last true wilderness. Stretching over 42,000 square kilometers, the reserve is dominated by endless Miombo woodland, punctuated by granite Musselbergs that rise like ancient monuments from the forest floor. It is a place where the line between the natural and supernatural have always been thin. Locals whisper of spirits that are bound to the old trees, guardians who do not forgive those who disturb the balance of the forest. The locals know to tread lightly. They speak in hushed tones of the Namuli, a spirit said to dwell in the large forest panga trees, ancient sentinels of the forest that have stood for centuries. In 2018, a pair of young activists traveled deep into the Nasia, drawn by reports of illegal logging targeting one such giant panga tree. They carried chains, protest signs, and a resolve to stop the destruction of one of the forest's last remaining giants. What they did not know, however, was that by chaining themselves to this tree, they were not merely protecting it, they were awakening something older, something patient and merciless. I'm the Gingerbeard Man, and if you're a fan of the mysterious, macabre, and miraculous, told from an African and South African perspective, then you've come to the right place. Tonight, we journey into Nasia, Mozambique, to uncover the legend of the Chained Ones. The young activists arrived just as the sun began to descend, painting the forest in long golden shadows. Their guide had warned them not to stay past dusk. Something in these woods did not like to be disturbed. But the activists laughed. They didn't care about the warnings. They were here to make a statement. Their chosen tree was an enormous tree. Its trunk stretched wider than a small car, its bark rough and wrinkled with the pages of centuries. The pair secured themselves with heavy chains around their wrists, laying protest signs against the roots of the tree. One of them even snapped a picture and sent it to their network of supporters. The other scouted the nearby surrounding area. The forest around them was alive with sounds, birds chirping, animals calling. Everything seemed normal. Everything was going to plan. However, as the sun disappeared behind the horizon, the wildlife fell silent. Even the wind seemed to pause. The forest, it would seem, had changed. A shadow moved amongst the granite boulders unnaturally. When one of the activists shone a flashlight, it disappeared. One suggested to the other that it was just a tree stump or a rock, but a cold nut of unease formed in the pits of their stomachs, because they knew deep down that something was amongst the trees, and it was watching them. The night deepened. Their flashlights carved weak beams through the dense Miombo trees. The activists began to hear something. A slow, deliberate scraping, like chains being dragged across the roots and stones. They assumed it was loggers, trying to scare them off. However, as the sound grew closer, the forest around them grew unnervingly still. Branches creaked overhead, even though there was no wind. Leaves rustled at their feet, yet no animal emerged. The pulsing rhythm of the tree beneath their hands grew noticeably, almost like a heartbeat. Fear started to take root. They were not alone, and whoever or whatever was watching them from within the trees was not human. After scanning the darkness for a little longer, they saw it. The Namuli. The creature's body was gaunt, covered in bark and twisted roots. Amber light glowed from deep sets of eyes, reflecting the dim moonlight, like molten sap. Vines like chains trailed from its arms, dragging along the forest floor with a rasping metallic clink. It did not rush. It did not roar. It circled patiently, studying its prey. Panic set in, and the activists shouted at the forest, waving their flashlights. But the Muli did not respond to words or lights. It waited, it made its presence felt through the forest. The forest felt impossibly vast and impossibly small at the same time. They realized the terrible truth. They were bound to a sacred tree. The ancient tree that they had chained themselves to was the dwelling spot of the Namuli. By chaining themselves, they had trespassed into the spirit's domain. The creature was not here to hunt loggers, it was here for them. One activist pointlessly fumbled for a small pocket knife, attempting to cut himself free. The other tried to reason, calling the spirit by name, begging it for mercy, but the forest seemed to pulsate around them, the roots shifting almost alive, tripping their feet and preventing them from going anywhere. The creature vanished into the shadows, only for the sound of dragging chains to appear on the opposite end. Every attempt that they made to escape failed. The chains were unyielding. Their protest had now become a prison. Time lost meaning in the forest, and the forest became a labyrinth of shadows. Every twig that snapped, every leaf that rustled, made the activists flinch. One screamed and struggled, only to find roots wrapping around their ankles, pulling them towards the darkness. The Namuli appeared suddenly, inches away, its eyes boring into their minds. Every scream echoed off the granite boulders, and then vanished. One activist was dragged screaming into the undergrowth. The other, still chained, could do nothing but watch in horror as their friend disappeared before his very eyes. When the forest finally fell silent again, all that remained was the giant Panga Panga tree, unscathed, and the faint shimmer of two small saplings sprouting at its base. The struggle for the activists were over. The forest had reclaimed its own. By dawn, the forest grew silent once more. The giant Panga Panga tree stood untouched, as if nothing had happened. Yet the activists were gone, as if swallowed by the very forest they had come to protect. Locals now speak of two young trees that grew overnight. At its base, their bark is etched faintly with human shapes, a warning perhaps to anyone who disturbs the balance of the Nasia's ancient woods. Some say that the Namuli still watches, waiting for its next intruders. Others claim that the forest itself has grown a little darker, a little colder since that night. And although we may never know the truth, one thing is certain in the Miyambo of Nasia: some chains are not meant to be broken. So that's going to do it for today's story, guys. Thank you for joining me in the shadows of the macabre, miraculous and mysterious. And remember, in the hearts of the forest, you are never truly alone. Tell me in the comments below if you know which Eli Roth horror movie inspired this story. Stay safe, stay curious. God bless.